True, Rabbi.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Terumais, Perek Aleph, Halacha Hey. We're learning today Daf Yud Gimel. We're starting on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph Mamish, on top of the Amid, but we are in middle of the Mishnah. So let's first start by reviewing the halacha that the Mishnah began with. Now we have to remember that we are in middle of a series of Mishnayos. We had in our pagination on Daf Tes Amid Beis a Mishnah that spoke about someone who took truma from olives for oil. And just for the sake of clarity, that we're not speaking about olives that are harvested to be consumed. We will learn about that today. We're speaking about olives that were harvested to make them into olive oil. Therefore, those olives are called a davar shaloi nigmara malachtoi. And first of all, you're not chayev yet to take trumas or maasros off something shaloi nigmara malachtoi. The chiyuv, the obligation, didn't kick in. Now, on the other hand, as we will see today, if you chose to start the procedure of removing trumas or maasros prior to the obligation time, what you did post facto will be okay. Problem in the Mishnah on Daf Tes is that you took truma from olives for oil. And therefore, the version that we had both in the Mishnah and then we had on Daf Yud Aleph, this will be important for today. We had a Braisa, B'Shem Rabbi Yosi, that had the same girsa that we had in the Mishnah. We're only going to speak about Shittas Beis Hillel, even though really, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are really in cahoots. They agree on the foundation, and that is that let's go with the words gezel or gezel hashevet, since we're somehow robbing the kohanim if we were to give them olives instead of oil. So therefore, midrabanan, not only should that truma not be taken, but if you did it, it's not effective. That was the key on Daf Tes Amud Beis. That's when you take it from the olives for the oil. You gave it to the kohen, it's b'chlal not truma. What we had yesterday in the beginning of the Mishnah, a halacha hey on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, is the opposite. If someone removed truma from the oil for the olives, you would argue that's great, right? Because the kohen is already getting oil. As we will see, first of all, don't do it. Now, don't do it makes sense because these are two different products. One is a davar shenigmara malachtoi, the oil. The olives that are harvested to be crushed is loy nigmara malachtoi. So don't remove the truma. But here, Chavre, remember, here we learned a new thing. Says the Mishnah, ve'im taram, if someone removed the olive oil, they moved 2% of olive oil for the olives, is trumasai truma, but v'yachsar v'yitraim. And as we finished yesterday's shir, midoi raisa, the oil is truma. Midrabanan, we'll see soon why they don't want you to do that, even post facto. And they're telling you have to remove truma again. Now, when would you remove truma again? That when you take those olives, that really midoi raisa, they are already mesukan from truma gedola, and you'll make them into olive oil. You have to now remove again truma. Okay, that is the din that we learned. Comes out that the original oil that you removed for the olives is truma midoi raisa. When you remove again truma from the oil that came from those already fixed olives, that's truma midrabanan. We're going to begin today's shir by learning two very important nafkaminas, differences, whether what we have is truma doiraisa or whether what we have is truma midrabanan. Now the Mishnah is going to give various other cases where you're giving truma from one item for another item. And ultimately, like we already spoke out on Daf Tes, in the Mishnah on Daf Tes, that there are three halachas. Lechatchila, don't give truma. Mi davar shaloi nigmara malachtoi. Al davar shenigmara malachtoi. Rule number 2 is the opposite. Lechatchila, don't give truma. Mi davar shenigmara malachtoi. Al davar shaloi nigmara malachtoi. And rule number 3, don't give truma. Mi davar shaloi nigmara malachtoi. Al davar shaloi nigmar malachtai, as we will see when we learn the Mishnah. When we will learn the Mishnah. Okay, now here's the big kicker, and I'm happy that we're speaking it out in the intro. First thing the Gemara will establish regarding the case of the Mishnah, the original case of the Mishnah. You removed oil, truma from the oil for the olives. Says the Mishnah, truma's truma. But midrabanan v'yachzor v'yitraim, you got to take truma again. That is only if the original truma was lost. Remember this. If the original truma was not lost, then we have the normal rule. Don't do it, but if you did it, it's done. And that will already give us the intro to explaining, I'm just going to say now in the words of introduction, the words of the Gemara, and that's called Geder Mei Chatos. So just like we had on Daf Tes, why is it that if you give Truma from olives for oil, even post facto, it's not valid? We learned over there Gezel Hashevet, as we learned over there, the 2 or 3 meanings of it. Here in our Mishnah, the reason why there's a problem to give Truma from oil for the olives is called Geder Mechatos, and as we'll see, the Geder Mechatos only fits the way we explained, that when the Rabbanan oblige you to give Truma again, if you lost the original Truma. That will be the ikar of today's daf. Now on daf Yud Gimel Lamed Beis, and that's going to go, God willing, into tomorrow into daf Yud Daled. Just like we quoted the Braisa on daf Yud Aleph, where Rabbi Yosi basically repeated the Mishnah on daf Tes, right? Olives for oil. That Beis Hillel says Bechlal, it's not truma for anything, but all of that was premised on the fact, even post facto. We're going to have another elaboration. First of all, we're going to have a shita of Rab Meir, as we'll see, and the Gemara is going to bring another Braisa, B'Shem Rabbi Yosi. Actually, that Braisa appears to be contradicting the Braisa that we quoted on Daf Yud Aleph. The resolution in the Yerushalmi will be very brief, but all of this will just shed a lot more light in the contrast between Geder, Gezel Hashevet, versus today, the Geder Mechatos. That will be today's daf. All right, buckle your seatbelt.
Sorry.
Yes, take a coffee and let's start.
The rabbinical decree to repay the teruma if you did oil for olives, was that a punishment the second time?
No, it's not a punishment. And again, the ikar is, Kevan, first of all, we never learned this yet, that what we learned until now is that even when something is valid biblically, Gezel HaShevet is a rabbinic law. Don't forget, on Daf Tes, Gezel HaShevet is a rabbinic concern. The Chachamim have the power to say, because of Gezel HaShevet, that if you remove Truma from olives for oil, what you did is not valid. Once they said that, you're obligated midoiraisa to separate Truma again. Not if you lose it.
But in reverse. I was saying
in the reverse. That's the Chiddush here. And I already want to add now what the Gemara will already introduce. That if you remove Truma from oil for the olives, even though midoiraisa, the Truma is first of all, don't do it. I got that. If you did it, it's Truma. If you won't lose that oil, you're good. It's done. If that Truma was lost, only in this case, the Chachamim said a new thing. Okay, now that you lost the oil Truma, now when the olives come to the Gemar Melacha, when you crush the olives, now that the olives became olive oil, you got to remove Truma again. Now the question is, that's the opening on Daf Yud Gimel, we're going to start inside. Is there any nafkemina between Truma d'Oraisa and Truma d'Rabbanan? On Daf Tes, when we said, if you remove Truma from oil, from olives for oil, from the olives for the oil, once the Chachamim there said that it's not okay, then the oil needs to be Trumad midoiraisa. Once the Chachamim said that removing from the olives for the oil, you're stealing from the tribe of the Kohanim, it's not valid, they have the koyach to say what you did is nothing. When you remove Truma from the oil, that's a biblical Truma. In our case, it's very important. Even when you lost the oil, now you took the olives and you made them into oil. Now the Chachamim said, remove Truma, really midoiraisa, this oil is already mesukan, because you already removed Truma for it from another oil. the oil for the olives. But midrabanan it's truma. So it says the Mishnah, I'm going to give you two differences, two halachic differences, whether truma is doiraisa or the rabbanon. Harashaina, the first truma is when you removed oil for the olives. That's biblical truma. Number one, midamas bifnei atzma. So let's review very important rules. Number one, midoiraisa chevra. Whenever there's a mixture of two items, it's good to know. Generally, biblically, the rule is batal beroiv. Very simple, which would mean, Aviv, think about it. If you have truma oil, it's a liquid, and I have chulin oil, let's say you're a kohen. You have 1 ounce, I have 2 ounces. And one of our kids mixed it together, all mixed together. Mida oiraisa, it's chulin. Midarabanan, no, you need to have a ratio to nullify it. What is the ratio by truma? 100 to 1. By truma, the ratio is 100 to 1, which means that if I have 100 ounces of chulin and you have 1 ounce of truma, if it gets mixed together, that's not called meduma. Meduma means mixed. It's not, that's called chulin. But if there is a mixture, and the mixture is lesser than the ratio needed to affect bittul, which is 100 to 1, even if it was 99 to 1. I have 99 ounces, you have 1 ounce. They got mixed together. It's not nullified. The whole thing is called meduma, from mixed. What's the din of meduma? First of all, in the case that I just gave, right now there's 100 ounces. One of it is truma. I don't know which one. So, number two, the other 99, maybe the truma's in it. No non-kohen can eat any of it. It can only be consumed by a kohen. Now, will the kohen have to pay for it? I cannot charge the kohen for 100 ounces. Why not? Because 1 ounce is his. 1 ounce is truma. So I get to sell the mixture. I only charge for 99. I don't charge for 100. And just for the record, the price that a kohen is willing to pay for truma is much less than the price that anyone would pay for non-truma oil. Why? Because something for which there is more people wanting it is something that people charge more money for. Since only kohanim are able to eat meduma, just to know that the price will already be cheaper. Well, number one is a gift, and the other 99 will be for the cheaper truma price. That's the din only if the first one got mixed. What happens now in our case? I separated oil for the olives. I lost the oil. Midoiraisa, the kohen lost. Even though no kohen got it. The Yisrael, before I gave it, I lost it. It's the loss of the kohanim. Midrabana, you took it from oil on olives. You shouldn't have done that. Now you got to tithe the olives again, which I did. So now I crushed the olives into oil. I removed another 2%. Let's say the 2% is another ounce. Now this ounce got mixed with 99 chulin. This drabanan will not create meduma. Truma midrabanan reverts back to the din Torah. What's the din Torah? Truma is batal beroiv. Simple. Number two, only by truma doiraisa, if a non-kohen inadvertently consumed it, what is the din? Not only does he have to compensate the kohen with the value of what he took, but there is a penalty for eating truma, which is he has to add a halachic fifth. A halachic fifth is what we would call a quarter. No. I separated oil. So I'm a Yisrael. I separated truma. What happens if someone, me or someone else, God forbid, by accident, they ate it? No, they ate it. Someone consumed truma. They not only do they have to pay the kohen the value of the truma, but the chayav and allow chaimish.
Is that the same case as losing something?
It's two different dinner. Yeah. By the I'll tell you, I'll put this in the case of losing. So if someone ate the original oil, they have to not only pay back the value, but they have to add a chaimish. So if it was worth $100 even though a fifth of $100 is $20, halachically, halachic fifth means $25. How was $25 a fifth of 100? Because when you add everything up together, 100 plus 25, what is 25 from 125? A fifth. That's the meaning of a fifth. However, if now, Aviv, I lost the first one, I lost the first oil. Now the Mishnah's din kicks in that even though the first oil was truma, even though yachzor v'yitroim, give truma again. When? Not by the olives. Now I'll make the olives into oil, even though really they were tithed already. I have to separate again from it. If I separate it now, which I did, this got mixed in chulin, doesn't create meduma with this ratio. It goes back to din Torah. If someone ate the second oil midrabanan, they have to compensate the kohen. It's the kohen's midrabanan, but they don't have to pay a chaimish. Now there's another thing that the Mishnah doesn't write, and for that we're going to look inside the Marafulda. This is Gaval. Huh? No, there's no way to fix meduma. Since ein mevatlan isa lechatchila, that's where Gabriel is going. A guy can ask, let me go back to the original din. I have 1 ounce, it fell into 99 ounces. Why do I have to have such a big loss of only being allowed to sell the 99 bidmei truma, which is very cheap? I'm losing money. Why shouldn't I just add another ounce of chulin? Now I have 100 to ratio to 1. We're not allowed to do that lechatchila. Okay, look inside the Marafulda, the last big line in top of the Amid. 4 lines from the tops. Avaloi sheniya. Therefore, the 2 rules don't apply. Doesn't create meduma, and you don't have to pay a chaimish. Now, there's another thing that goes without saying that the Marafulda says. And we're going to have that tomorrow, in tomorrow's daf. Wowee. This is a bomb. So listen, guys, halt up. When I separate truma, let me go back to the beginning. Really, we said, right, I have to separate truma, my serishain, my sesheni. When I separate truma, Viv, and I give my truma to the kohen, does the kohen have to separate anything off it? Nada. Even though that never had my serishain removed from it, that never had my sesheni removed from it, that's the rule. My serishain is only something that has to be separated from that which remains from the truma. The truma itself is 100% mesukan. The kohen eats it. My sedishan is not exactly the same, but it's similar, because even though from the my sedishan, the Levi has to separate 1, which is trumas meiser, 10%, but the Levi does not have to separate meiser sheni from it. The Levi does not have to separate meiser ani from it. Let me go back to the truma. Now think about it right now. I separated oil for the olives. Midoiraisa, it's truma. If I didn't lose it, everything is good. Just to make for the record. If I didn't lose it, all of those olives don't need truma separated from it. But what do the olives need when I make those olives into oil? I only separated truma. So what's needed biblically for me to be able to eat the oil from the olives? My serishan, my sesheni, my serani, I can't stam eat it. From all of it. So let's say the olives that will produce 100 ounces. I don't get to eat 100 ounces at all. I have to separate 10%, 90. Then I have to separate another 10%, 9 from the 90. Then I get to eat it. Now we're saying midrabanan, if I lost the original oil, when I have this new 100 ounces, what do? I separate first 2 ounces and I give it to the kohen. Can the kohen eat those 2 ounces? No. Why not? Because midoiraisa, what are those 2 ounces? Those 2 ounces are the remaining from the original truma. Those 2 ounces need for my sedishan and my sesheni to be removed from it. Only truma is exempt from my sedishan and my sesheni. Midoiraisa, that's not truma. Midoiraisa, I'm giving a gift. In other words, midoiraisa, it's already mesukan from truma. So this goes without even saying, says the Marafulda, that the kohen who gets that too cannot eat it. Now, does he separate from it? He doesn't separate anything from it. The kohen, the recipient, but he has to take from other produce and separate from other produce for it my sedishan and my sesheni.
Can you
Tevel,
sell it?
that's another, yes, but a kohen can sell his truma, but the only purchaser will be a kohen, so it's going to be for a cheaper price. Truma is always sold for a lesser amount of money, but it doesn't. But that's not touching the point that we're speaking about. Lefikach einoi nechol. Since the second truma is only midrabanan, which means midoiraisa, it's not truma. Only truma is exempt from ma'aser rishon and ma'aser sheni. But this is not biblically. You know, it's the chachamim can only be machmir. They can't be mekel. If you didn't stop it, we're going to learn this tomorrow inside the Gemara. But let me come back over here. That's a very important point because the Mishnah is getting sophisticated.
Rabbi,
It says the Marafulda before the Tunaf Kamina is not Meduma, not a Chaimish. There's another huge difference. That is a given. That's already a given.
so Rabbi, the Kohen has to pay Truma Gedola. What happens to Maser Rishon, Truma Maser, and Maser Sheni?
Very good. Very good. So the Kohen doesn't have to separate from his Truma, not Ma'aser Rishon, not Trumas Ma'aser, and not Ma'aser Sheni, not Ma'aser Roni.
Got it.
Very important, Kevin. And that's the whole word. The moment something is not Truma, even if the Chachamim say, midrabanan it's Truma, the Chachamim cannot exempt it with the real biblical exemptions of Truma. Biblically, Truma is exempt from everything. This is not exempt. I know, that's the point. Okay, now, let's go invited in the Mishnah. Now, there's going to be more nuances of the same rule. Really, we learned 3 rules. That's the whole thing. You can't take Truma. Mi davar sheloi nigmar, li davar shenigmar. Mi davar shenigmar, li davar sheloi nigmar. Mi davar sheloi nigmar, al davar sheloi nigmar. That's it. So let's go. The Torah shemen al azeisim hanichbashim. You are allowed to separate oil for olives that are being preserved. Guys, we're going to make olives now into 3 categories of olives. Olives that are meant to be crushed. Olives that are meant to be crushed are only nigmar malachton when they are crushed, when they're oil. Now you have olives that are meant to be preserved not to be eaten raw. Preserved means you're going to either put them in salt or in vinegar or both in order for them to last a longer time, but you're not planning to crush them into oil. So the Mishnah is telling you that if the olives are meant to be preserved, they are already considered nigmar malachton. That's important. In other words, and therefore you are allowed to separate from oil for olives. They're not 2 products. It's the same product. It's the same product. If you remember, when it comes to the bracha on olive oil, many people opine that you make a bracha ha'etz on olive oil. The only reason why you would not do that is because it's not healthy to eat olive oil, which is something that we can speak about another time. We learned about this in brachas. Same thing with grapes. In other words, the only reason why you don't make a bracha on wine, Boire Priya AIDS, is because wine is so chashuv, so they made even a bigger bracha. I like Boire Priya Gofen. But just understand, olives and grapes, it's not apples and oranges. So the only issue that we were having is that olives that are meant to be crushed is not a finished product. But if the olives are going to be preserved, then you could separate truma from the oil in proportion for the olives. Similarly, v'yayin, you are allowed to separate truma lechatchila from the wine al anovim, on grapes la'asoysoin tzemukin, that are meant to be made into raisins. Now, we're going to have some more discussion about this in the Gemara, because you would argue, okay, if you're planning to make it into raisins, then maybe it should be considered not completed until when it's raisins. We're going to get to that in the Gemara. Don't worry about it.
Same for preserved. Preservation. Same for preserved.
Same for preservation. We're going to, Kevin, we'll leave that for tomorrow. Now, the third case is simple. Simple is not olives for preservation. What happens if you have olives like today? You're going to eat the olives. Or grapes that you're going to eat. Then avada you could. If you separated truma from the oil for olives, not for preservation. Olives that are mamish the way they are, you're going to eat them. Or v'zeisim al zeisim lachila, or for olives on olives, not olives to be eaten on olives that are going to be crushed. Olives that are all in the category that you're going to eat them the way they are. Davar shenigmar malachton. Same thing when it comes to wine. V'yayin alanovim lachila, not grapes that you're gonna make them into raisins. By the way, on raisins you make a boire priya eitz. All of these things are very significant. because the fact that you make a Boyer Priya Eitz on raisins is a raya that raisins is grapes in Hilchas Brachas. You want to separate a truma from wine, not only for itself, for grapes the way they are, which will be eaten. First of all, or the Mishnah doesn't have to say you could do it. That's such a pshita, but the Mishnah is now going to add a nuance, and you did it, and you did it. After you separated truma, you change your mind, and you say, you know what? Some of the olives I want to crush. Some of the grapes I want to make into wine. Now what do we say? If you separate from olives for wine, for oil, that's the Mishnah Daf Tes. What did we learn? Because of Gezel HaShevet, we learned it's not effective. Here, when you did it, it was midavar shenigman malachtoi, al davar shenigman malachtoi. But the bottom line is that you didn't eat the grapes. So v'nimlach ledarcha, now you changed your mind, you reconsidered. Says the Mishnah, since during the time that you separated truma, you did it correctly, even though later you changed your mind, the changing of the mind does not undo your truma at all. Einoy tzarech litroim. Beautiful. And now the Mishnah articulates the bigger rule of the whole Mishnah. Don't forget the examples was oil, was wine. Now, where did we have that? What was that din, Chevra? Aviv? That I'm going to call it, that's the Mishnah of Daf Yud Beis. Yes, Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. That's the case. Oil for olives. Which we learned, if you did it, but v'yachzer v'yitrei. The next rule is, v'loi mi davar shaloi nigmen ha'malachtoi, al davar shenigmen ha'malachtoi. What was that? That was the Mishnah Daf Tes, when you took it from the olives for the grapes. What did we learn over there? Bechlal not effective. Even though in our Mishnah it will be effective. We already had that before. Because punkt, in the case of olives to oil, since it's so laborious for the kohen to make the olives into the oil, the Chachamim really said, we undo it. Somehow they undo it and you're chayv midoiraisa. Our Mishnah is speaking about grain. So some of it you already trampled and winnowed. Some of it you didn't. Even though it's work, nish geferlich. But lachatchila for sure not.
All right, sorry, question.
Yes.
The fact that you change your mind is not effective. Is that because the initial machshava is always primary?
Well, it's because since while you did something, it was good, it can't get undone.
But doesn't the truma work with just machshava, initial machshava?
Yeah. But when you did truma, however you did the truma at that time, what you did was lachatchila a good truma. How come the Chachamim cannot undo it? The Chachamim can say that if while you're doing it, it's not okay, we can make you not be the owner, and somehow what you did is nothing. And the third rule is v'loy mi davar shaloi nigmar ha'malachtoi, al davar shaloi nigmar ha'malachtoi. And in all of these cases, ve'im tarmu trumas on truma. And the Gemara is going to ask, guys, the kasha that we had, how can the Mishnah say ve'im tarmu trumas on truma? How can we say that on the case of the olives for the oil that we already discussed earlier on Daf Yud? We already discussed that before. This is an exception. What our Gemara tomorrow or the next day will discuss, how can the Mishnah say trumas on truma when in the Reisha of our Mishnah, which is the first case, mi davar shenigman ha'malachtin is from oil, al davar shaloi nigman ha'malachtin is for olives. Here the Mishnah says trumas on truma. The Reisha of the Mishnah said what? V'yachzer v'yitraim. V'yachzer v'yitraim. The reconciliation will be, I'll give you a heads up because we already mentioned it, is that if you did not lose the original trumas and truma, and you don't have to re-separate. When the Mishnah wrote in the Reisha, v'yachzer v'yitraim, that's only if you lost the original truma. Okay. Taninon, at the end of the Mishnah we learned, again, the Yerushalmi is mikatzer. But what the Gemara is focusing on is on the last line that we just spoke out of the Mishnah. But if you did it, it's done. If you took from oil for olives, that's it. You're good. Halacha means, but the Reish of the Mishnah says that even though you did it, midrabanan, you have to do it again. Okay. So now let's go back. Why before you see, it's amazing how the Gemara doesn't even say that you lost it. It's implied. Why would you have to do it again? You guys we are so familiar. There's so many rules that lachatchila don't do it. But if you did it, you did it. Why do you have to do it again?
You did it first time, it was fine.
Once you did it, you did it. So here says the Gemara Daf Hila. The Shem Rabbi Yechanan explains that you know why midrabanan you have to at times, which is when you lose the original. Why do you have to separate truma again midrabanan? These are the words mipnei geder meichatos. Geder meichatos means we want to protect the waters of chatos, which means that if a kohen becomes tummy betumas meis, what does the kohen need to do to be able to eat truma? He has to undergo, or she has to undergo, the steps of purification, which includes getting sprinkled on the third day and on the seventh clean day of their count with the waters of the red heifer, mechatos. When there is no truma, which is in the case where the truma got lost, there won't be a need for the kohen to have himself sprinkled with mechatos. In other words, there is an advantage of there being more truma in the world, because that brings into practice the rules of mechatos. Make no mistake, even a Yisrael needs to undergo the procedure of mechatos if he or she, if they want to eat kachim, if they want to go into the Beis Hamikdash. I know that. But the reality is that we normally went to the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a year, and then on special occasions. The kohen ate truma every single day. If that's the way the Gemara is saying, if the original truma was not lost, so for the kohen, so there's truma here. The kohen won't forget that you need to undergo the purification of mechatos because he can only eat it if he has mechatos. But if the original truma got lost, which is not that common, only there did the Chachamim say v'yachzer v'yitraim, for there to be truma, for there to be a kohen who has the dilemma, I have truma, it's free food, but I got to become pure. Let me make sure that I'm going to purify myself if needed with mechatos. I know, just remember, that's how it works. So our case, the Mishnah's case of separated oil for olives, when the Mishnah says Yachzer v'yitraim, now it's clear is only if the original was lost, and the logic would be geder mechatos. We don't want for truma to get lost. Truma gets lost, then there's lesser of a need for a kohen to undergo the mechatos. That's the way you learn the Mishnah. You're new. You have to. That's how it works.
Okay, but so this case, like doing another truma, that's for all truma, or just for the oil for the olives?
Very good. So Aviv pointed out something very important. When I separate truma in our Mishnah, Daf Yud Beis, from the oil for the olives, what I'm really doing is some of it was for the oil. Some of it was for the olives. The part from the oil for the oil never has to be redone. There isn't a rule that if kohen loses his truma or if the Yisrael loses truma, he has to reset. There's no such a thing. It's only for that which was done incorrectly. Because lechatchila, I should not have separated the oil for the olives, simply because of the rule that I'm separating truma mi davar shenigmar malachton al davar sheloy nigmar malachton. So since I did something that's not lechatchila, and now I lost it, so in this case the Chachamim said, no, let's make new truma in the world. So the kohen should have to undergo the mechatos if he's tamei. If the one who received it became tamei, and if this is the only truma, and if not, he'll buy chulin. If not, he'll buy chulin, he won't have to do the mechatos. Now, this is a very narrow gezeda. The gezeda that we had on Daf Tes, the Mishnah on Daf Tes, which is when you separated truma from the olives for the oil, giving the kohen the olives. Interestingly, there we don't say that if you lose it, we don't say that over there. There we say that b'chal it's not truma. Why gezel hashevet? We, just like by marasayin, we don't apply marasayin any case you want. We have to limit it to the cases of Chazal. Same thing, all of these gezedas, geder mechatos, gezel hashevet, we only can apply them where the Chazal said it. What happens if there'll be a case that's a little bit different, similar but different? Could we expand that? Can we say that just like Chazal said here, Gezel Shevet, same thing over there, or not? Could we expand the Geder Mechatos, or not? That's the question that we have, the way we will learn it at the bottom of Daf Yud Gimel. Asks the Gemara, Mi Chamur, Gezel Shevet, or Geder Mechatos? It's very important the way we are interpreting it. We're learning the Gemara not according to everyone's understanding. Mi Chamur means, if I were to ask you, what do you think is more Chamur? Saying that it's not, the Chachamim saying it's not Truma at all, or them saying it's Truma, but if you lose it, you have to do it again. I think saying it's not Truma at all, for me, is a lot more Chamur. They're saying you shouldn't have done it, because of Geza, we undid it. You have to now Midoiraisa separate. If someone ate, then they're eating Tevel Midoiraisa. So that's not the Gemara's question, Mi Chamur, because we know which one is more Chamur. Gezel HaShevet made the Chachamim undo it altogether. Chamur means, could you expand it or not? What will be the case for its expansion? Let's go to Daf Yud Gimel Amid Beis, and the Gemara right away answers: Is Nishma'ina min Hadam? When we have in a Braisa, the Braisa is saying, Zeisim al Zeisim v'hu asid l'koichan. So here you have olives. All of the olives are going to be made into oil, which means the olives, the way they are, which is the topic of Daf Tes, Daf Yud Beis, are olives that are shaloi nigmar malachton. And what did the Mishnah say? Our Mishnah says that if you separate mi davar shaloi nigmar malachton, al davar shaloi nigmar malachton, the Mishnah says generally, not if you lost it, generally it's done. Trumas and truma. But now let's go into a braisa. Or similarly, if you had grapes, Gabriel, all of these grapes were going to be, the kavana was lidarchan. They are going to be trampled upon. They're made for wine. None of these grapes is nigun malachta. Again, what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said that you shouldn't do it. If you did it, you did it. Now, what happens if you lost it? The Braisa says, truma v'yachzer v'yitram. Now, hold on a second. I can argue if I'm going to expand, if I'm going to take the Gezel HaShevet and apply it in similar cases, not the same, or Geder Mechatos, both of them theoretically should be applicable over here. Aviv, this is so geschmack. Let's go the case. Let me go to Gezel HaShevet because that's Daf Tes. Same logic. If I have to give to Truma from wine, and making olives, making grapes into wine, Gabriel gets paid the big bucks because it's laborious. You got to know what you're doing. Gezel HaShevet. Gezel HaShevet was a reason for the Chazal to undo what you did. If we would have expanded Gezel HaShevet, we would have applied it over here. What would we have said if we would have applied Gezel HaShevet over here? That if you did it, it's not done. The Braisa doesn't say that. Let me go now to Geder Mechatos. Same thing. I should not give grapes on grapes because midoiraisa you don't give mi davar shaloi nigmara al davar shaloi nigmara. It's mamash. It's sweet like honey. This you shouldn't. But I did it. Now, if you don't apply any of the rules, then you'll say like any b'diavad. If you did it, you did it. This Braisa says no. If you lost the original grapes, now that you made it into wine, now you got to separate it midrabanan. What do we see from this Braisa? That even though logically one could have argued both Gezel HaShevet and Geder Mechatos, which ones did the Braisa expand? Other Tanoim took from the original topic of the Tanoim was either olives on oil or oil on olives. The original Gezeda was never discussing olives, grapes. This is already extending. Which one was extended? Which one was not extended? Clearly, Gezel HaShevet was not extended. Geder Mechatos was extended. That's the meaning of Chamur. Dance. Here you go. The logic of Gezel HaShevet is here. The logic of Geder Mechatos is here. Nevertheless, which one do we adopt? Which one do we reject? Beautiful. The Tana law never was taken the Braisa. Truma v'yachser v'yitroim. Hada amra shegeder mechatos is chamur migezel hashevet. Again, chamur doesn't mean the way most people understand it to mean. Really, gezel hashevet was so chamur that the Chachamim said in the case that they said it, what you did is nothing. The oil for the olives, right? The olives for the oil, the olives, daf tes is garnished. Here they're saying, no, it's good. If you lose it, you got to do it again. Chamur, not chamur means, do we have the right? We meaning even other Tanoim. Forget about us. Not even Amoyroim. Do the later Tanoim have the right to take a rabbinic decree and to extend it to a non-exact case? That which is allowed, that which gets extended is called chamur. Here you see how careful we have to be. When it comes to rabbinic law, even though we think we understand it based on what they're saying, to apply it to any other case is something very difficult. We limit it to where they gave that gezerah. Only something that's very chamur is allowed, not by us. By Chazal, to say that just like it was said by Aleph, you can say it by Beis. Beautiful. Now says the Gemara like this. We had a Mishnah on Daf Tes. Guys, halt up. It's very simple, just a lot of information. The Gemara brought a Braisa of Rabbi Yossi. There was a Psahavamina and Rabbi Yossi. I'm not going to go back to Daf Yud Aleph. The Gemara quoted on Daf Yud Aleph a Braisa, B'Shem Rabbi Yossi, where Rabbi Yossi repeated the Mishnah of Daf Tes exactly. Which is, you remember, Aviv, that if you separate Truma from olives on oil, Beishamai Beisilol, the whole thing, and let's go to Beisilol, nothing is nothing. The whole thing is undone. All predicated on the Gezel Hashem. Says the Gemara. Just like we found that Rabbi Yossi subscribes to the Girsa of the Halacha of Beisilol, which is that there is Gezel Hashevet in that case of olives for oil, does the Tana Rabbi Yossi agree to our Mishnah that because of Geder Mechatos, if you took Truma from oil on the olives, if you lost the oil, then later when you make the olives into oil, you got to separate Truma again. Ma Amar Rabbi Yossi Hacha. So the Gemara tells you logically, for sure, factually not. What's the logic for sure? Ma in Rabbi Meir the Mekel begezel hashevet. So today we're learning something new. This will be the final big thing we're learning today. We already substantiated. There's a Mishnah on Daf Tes. The Gemara we just quoted. Rabbi Yossi agrees with the Mishnah on Daf Tes. Now the Gemara will introduce a Braisa in a few lines in which the Tana Rabbi Meir will hold. Rav Meir says that if you separate Aviv, Halkop, if you separate Truma from olives for oil, post facto, Rav Meir holds what you did is good. So whoever struggled with the Gezel HaShevet, you can be happy now that you're now siding with Yahavum Telina. Rav Meir doesn't accept the whole Gezel HaShevet. Okay, you took the Truma in the right proportion, You gave it from so then it's good. So now we know, no, there is a Tana that doesn't hold of the whole Gezed of Gezel HaShevet, which is Rav Meir. Yet Rav Meir is Machmir begeder mechatos. By the way, this fits to what we just learned above. What did we just learn above? What's more chamur? What's more chamur is geder mechatos. So logically, you see it's more chamur. Now we know Rav Meir holds of geder mechatos. Rav Meir rejects Gezel HaShevet. Rabbi Yossi, that we learned on Daf Yud Aleph, the Machmer beGezel HaShevet, logically, Kal V'chomer is loy kolchchein, do Machmer begeder mechatos. For sure, Rabbi Yossi will agree to this. Says the Gemara, yeah, logically is beautiful, and Chevra, the whole Torah Sheval Peh doesn't go with logic. We have to go with the Mesoira. And then we use our seichel to understand it to the best that we could. So logically, I would have concluded, of course, Rabbi Yossi agrees with this. We just said, Geder Mechatos is more chamur. So, Gemara, nice shkoyach, but you're wrong. Why is that? Because I found the Tana, B'Shem Rabbi Yossi, that says the opposite. Now, there's a little nuance over here. The Braisa actually appears to contradict the Braisa that we had on Daf Yud Aleph. And therefore, we're going to have to add a clarification in the Brisa. Let me just read the words. What the Brisa begins. Tanakama's Rav Meir, Rabbi Yossi. Ein Torah zeisen ala shemen, v'lo yanovam ala yayin. What's this case? Daf tes aviv. Here you have Rav Meir, and if you separated it, truma say truma, ve'ein tzarech litroim sheniya. Divrei Rav Meir. Befedish, not like daf tes. If you took from olives for the oil. However, Rabbi Yossi Omer, now this is the Rabbi Yossi, and he says, no, machlekes b'shama beisilel, b'shama yoimrim, that part, toirimim. First of all, another nuance. According to this version, Rabbi Yossi holds that Beishamai holds that lechatchila you are allowed to do it. This is a new nuance. Beshitas Beishamai. Daf Yudalid. Beisilel loimrim ein toirmin. Now Hakol Moedim, everyone agrees. Hakol goes both Beishamai and Beisilel, not Rav Meir and Rabbi Yossi. She'im taram she'ein tzarech litrem sheniya. Now these words she'im taram she'ein tzarech litrem sheniya. Number one, number two. Number one, this is not the same case of the erasure of the Braisa, which is that you took from olives and oil. Why not? Because Rabbi Yossi just said, we had on Daf Yud Aleph, that Rabbi Yossi quotes Beis Hillel that says, no, it's not good. Not good. Must be, therefore, that this line, She'im taram she'ein tzarech litrem sheniya, is not speaking about the case from olives for oil, speaking about the case of oil for olives, the case of our Mishnah Daf Yud Beis. And what does it say in our Mishnah? Yachzer v'yitraim, if you lose it. What does Rabbi Yossi say? Even if you lose it, you don't have to take it. What do we see over here? Zok the Gemara, Havei Rayon. Think about it, and you'll realize that Rav Meir is mekel begezel hashevet, fact. Umachmer begeder mechatos, fact. That fits with what we learned on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. What's more chamor? What's more chamor, chevra? Geder mechatos. Rabbi Yossi does the opposite. Rabbi Yossi is machmer begezel hashevet. As we learned on Daf Yud Aleph, Rabbi Yossi holds, Beis Hillel holds, that midrabanan, if you separated truma from olives and oil, it's not a truma. And Rabbi Yossi now holds, not like our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi holds that if you separated oil for olives, even if you lost the oil, he doesn't hold of Geder Mechatos. So make of the Geder Mechatos. So we have now really another Tana that argues with the Tana of our Mishnah. We'll stop over here to be continued.
Shkoyach.